Alright, here we go. Dummies for Sports Playoff Machine special, as we do at this time of year, and we did it last week heading into week 17, breaking down all the scenarios. Last week I broke down all the potential primetime matchups, and I think we weren't too far off. However, I did not anticipate the Ravens beating the Packers and the Steelers losing to the Browns, so I didn't anticipate Ravens-Steelers being Sunday Night Football, but I did throw out there that if Ravens-Steelers were to happen and be a meaningful game for the division, then that would turn out to be Sunday Night Football. So, not a shocker they did it after the fact. I didn't see the scenario playing out, but it did in fact happen. I thought the most likely scenario was Niners-Seahawks to be Sunday night, but it turns out it's going to be Saturday night because we have a winner go home on Sunday night, and then I did throw out Bucks-Panthers being 4:30 as well, just because of the scenarios playing out there. So let's take a look. We have a bunch of scenarios to go through in Week 18, less so than we had last week, obviously, because more things have started to pan itself out. But there still are a bunch of scenarios to go through. So let's take a look. Let's go with the simplest scenario that we know, just to start off Week 18. The simplest thing in Week 18 is there are two spots remaining, okay? And the first one is the winner of the AFC North. As we know, the Baltimore Ravens win that game. They would win the AFC North. If the Steelers win this game, they win the AFC North simply because they would end the season, as we see here, two games in front of the Baltimore Ravens. So that is obvious. They would be 10-7. The Ravens would be 8-9. That's an obvious one. Now, if the Ravens win this game, they win the division. They're both end the season at 9-8. So why did the Ravens win the division? Well, the answer is very simple. As we look at our tiebreakers over here, we will see that the Ravens have the best win percentage in division games. The Ravens and Steelers currently have a 3-2 division record. So if the Ravens win this game, they'll have a 4-2 division record. The Steelers will have a 3-3 division record. The Ravens and Steelers will split the season series, and therefore the Ravens will win the division. So that is straight up win or go home unless there's somehow a tie in that game, in which case the Steelers will win the division. So that's the scenario with Ravens-Steelers. Now the question is going to become, well, who plays the Ravens/Steelers? Who travels to Pittsburgh, travels to Baltimore? Who's going to have to travel to a 9 or 10 win team in the wild card round? The answer is actually interesting. So as of right now, if all these teams win, right? We have the Texans, we have the Chargers, we have the Bills. If all these teams win, then obviously what's going to happen, that is going to stay put because the Texans have the tiebreaker with all those three teams. Why is that? Let's take a look. Head-to-head sweep. Obviously, they beat both the Chargers last week on Saturday. They beat the Bills earlier this season, Thursday Night Football game, which a lot of people talked about. Josh Allen's worst game of the season. So therefore, they beat both teams. That's very simple. Now, what if the Texans lose? Who's next in line? It's the Chargers. Why? Let's take a look. Common games, right? So the way it works is the Bills and Chargers did not play each other. So the next tiebreaker would be conference record in conference games. And because their record in the conference games are identical, therefore we'll go to common games, and apparently the Chargers have the tiebreaker over common games. So Texans lose, Chargers and Bills win, Chargers travel to Baltimore/Pittsburgh. Then, obviously, the next thing up is if the Broncos win, which is more likely because Justin Herbert's not playing in this game. So then the next up would be Bills traveling to Baltimore. So the most likely scenario is Texans, Riley Leonard starting for the Colts. Texans and Bills probably both win. Chargers lose, so we have the Texans traveling to Baltimore/Pittsburgh. And then we have the Bills at 6, and then we have the Chargers at 7. Where will those teams be going? Well, let's discuss that. That's also up in the air. So right now, the very simple for the Broncos, it's win and get the number 1 seed. They control their own destiny. They have the tiebreaker over the Patriots, and let's check out why. They have the tiebreaker over the Patriots because common games. Again, it must be that the conference record is identical, and therefore we go to common games, and apparently that tiebreaker would go to Denver. Okay, so what about? So in order for for New England to get the number 1 seed, they need the Broncos to lose to a Trey Lance-led Chargers team, and then they need to beat the Dolphins. And for the Jaguars, they still have a chance to get the number 1 seed as well if they get a Quinn Ewers-led Dolphins to beat the Patriots, a Trey Lance-led Chargers to beat the Broncos, and then they have to go ahead and defeat the Cam Ward-led Tennessee Titans. So those are the only 3 teams in play for the number 1 seed. Jaguars, outside shot. They have the tiebreaker over these 3 teams. Why? Best win percentage in conference games. So they would take the cake there. But it is very unlikely considering both the Chargers and Dolphins are on their backup quarterback and, not really playing for much. The Chargers are playing for seeding, but Jim Harbaugh made it very clear that he wants to give Herbert a rest behind 4/5 of their offensive line are injured, and the offensive line's been the weakness of the Chargers the entire season, obviously. And he's been getting hit a lot. Teams have been coming after him, and He wants to give Herbert that 1 week off before they go to the playoffs, go on the road. Okay, so the most likely scenario we're looking at is Denver wins, Patriots win, Jaguars win. Now, if the Jaguars lose, the Texans can still jump ahead and get the 3 seed. That's the highest they go, I believe. Let's see. Yes, the Texans do not go higher than 3. So the Texans will either be one of these wild cards or they'll be the 3 seed. That's only if the Jaguars lose to the Texans and the Texans beat the Colts. Let's say this all stays. Then you can get an interesting division matchup, which would be fascinating. Of course, the Texans win. Let's see what happens if what we expect to happen happens. And the Bills beat the Jets. Okay, good. You'll have Houston going to either Baltimore or Pittsburgh, depending on which team wins that game. You'll have Buffalo going to Jacksonville. Interesting matchup. Could set up an interesting matchup if you see New England lose here, and then you have a division matchup over here. So that could be quite fascinating. And you have the Chargers going to either New England or Jacksonville, and Denver most likely getting that number 1 seed. Okay, good. That's all on the AFC side. Now, here comes the NFC side. So as I mentioned before, Seahawks Niners, Saturday Night Football. Everything's on the line there. Number 1 seed. It's a playoff game. You win this game, you win a playoff game. Now it's not an elimination game because you get another chance next week. So basically, both these teams have 2 chances to win the wild card game. That's basically how I view it. And it's very simple. Niners win, they get the number 1 seed. Seahawks win, they get the number 1 seed simply because they'll have the best record in the conference. The Niners will have the tiebreaker with the Seahawks. Why is that? Head-to-head. They beat the Seahawks the first time. So, therefore, if they beat them again, they beat the Seahawks twice, season sweep, they take the cake. And there would be no other 13 or 4 teams either. So this is that's it, straight up. There are no ifs and or buts about it. And the question is going to be like this: let's say the Seahawks lose, and let's say the Rams win. I mean, let's say the Niners lose. So the Seahawks can fall all the way to 6. They can either end after Saturday night, after Sunday afternoon rather. They can have the 1 seed, or they can have the 6 seed. Because if they lose and the Rams beat the Cardinals, possibility, then they will fall to 6 because the Rams have the tiebreaker over them. Why do the Rams have the tiebreaker over them? Common games. Okay, good. So that's the tiebreaker. That's the scenario over there. If the Niners win, the Rams are locked in at 6 because the Niners will have a better record than the Rams. So the Rams could jump up to 5 with the Niners loss and a Rams win. And that's significant because the 5 seed plays Carolina/Tampa Bay, probably the weakest team in the playoffs, right? I mean, that's the winner of the NFC South. Carolina's kind of been inconsistent since week 7. They've alternated wins and losses. This confusing team that beat the Rams and the Packers randomly this year, but also got swept to the Saints. Bryce Young really showed up 2 weeks ago against the Bucs in that division matchup to give them the upper leg over here. But then last week against the Seahawks, fell apart, had like 55 yards through the air or something. So that's probably where you want to go, right? So it's significant for the Niners, even if they lose, to root for a Rams loss as well, so that they can go to Carolina/Tampa Bay. Now, Green Bay's locked in at 7. We don't have to discuss that. That's their seed. So what about Carolina/Tampa Bay? So I discussed this on week 17, not knowing the full scenario, of course. I said, so long as Tampa Bay wins, or Carolina loses, this will be win or go home. But I did not realize the scenario that everyone's been talking about, which is the Falcons affecting a 3-way tiebreaker, as we know. Maybe you don't know, but anyway, we'll discuss it. If the Falcons win on Sunday against the Saints, then the Saturday game, again, retroactively means nothing, because the Bucs can win this game, and as you see, the Panthers still go ahead and win the division. If the Bucs win and the Falcons lose, then they would win. So the Bucs have a chance here, but they need some help. They do not control their own destiny. Why is that? Because if the Falcons win, and the Bucs win, and the Panthers lose, they're all 8-9, and the tiebreaker, 3-way tiebreaker, goes to the Panthers. Why? Head-to-head win percentage, right? Because that would because the Panthers split with the Bucs, and the Panthers swept the Falcons, whereas the Bucs split with the Falcons. So that would give them the advantage. So that's the scenario. So Panthers win, they're in. Panthers control their own destiny. They don't need any help. If the Bucs win, the Panthers could still get in if the Falcons win. What the Bucs need is very simple. The Bucs need to win, and they need to root for Tyler Shuck and the Saints on Sunday. This could be very interesting, actually. And I was discussing this with my friends because they set the schedule Sunday night before the Rams-Falcons game, which was Monday night. knowing that Bucks-Panthers could potentially not be a winner-go-home game. And I told them, and I still think this is the case, I think the NFL put this game Saturday at 4:30, knowing it might not be a winner-go-home game. But that's a perfect for the 4:30 slot, because in past years, the NFL only started a doubleheader on Saturday in Week 18 a few years ago. And in past years, the games that they put on at the 4:30 slot were not overly significant. Last year, they put Ravens-Browns there. The Ravens already clinched the division. The Browns were completely out of the playoffs. It was just they would put Ravens-Browns 4:30, and they put Steelers-Bengals Saturday night just to compete for the division. But the Ravens clinched the division already by Saturday night, so none of it even mattered. So it wasn't an overly significant game. It was just really for seeding. But this is a significant game because it could potentially be win or go home, right? So to me, I look at it as a win-win for the NFL. If the Falcons lose, it's win or go home. Great, we have a win or go home game on Saturday. We have a win for the bye Saturday night, and then we have a win or go home game on Sunday night. Great primetime slate. But if the Falcons end up winning and it's not win or go home, it's still a significant game because it's still the Bucks can win and have a chance to make the playoffs, or the Panthers can win and then clinch their destiny to make the playoffs. So it's still a really significant game in that way. And if you would have just buried it in the 1 o'clock slot next to the Falcons Saints, it wouldn't have been nearly as fun to watch. But here you watch it, it's hyped up. It could potentially be for the division on the line. So, and it's a huge game, regardless of whether or not the Bucks make the playoffs. So I think the NFL did a good job scheduling that in that way. Now let's just look at the other scenarios we have. So again, the only two berths on the line are Ravens-Steelers fighting it out for the number 4 seed, AFC North. Bucks-Panthers fighting it out for the NFC South, the 4 seed. Both 4 seeds are still open. The only other thing yet to be decided is we know the Bears are going to win the division, the Eagles are going to win the division, but the 2 and 3 seed is still yet to be decided. So it's very simple. Both Bears and Eagles win. Bears get the 2 seed. And then that's significant because the Packers are, of course, banged up and no Micah Parsons. And we don't know Jordan Love's status, although we probably assume he'll be back for the wild card weekend. But either way, the Packers have injuries on defense, and pass rush has not been nearly as stout. Have to rely on Rashawn Gary to kind of be that number 1 pass rusher. Not the same as Micah Parsons, obviously not the same game wrecker. So that's probably the team you want to play, although they're not a slouch, not a pushover, but the defense has struggled without Micah Parsons, obviously. So that probably is the seed you want. Now, the Lions will play hard, probably. The fighting Dan Campbells, and they'll probably play hard. And if that's the case, it opens up the door for the Eagles to beat the Commanders and get a number 2 seed and go ahead and play Green Bay. If you get the 3 seed, you got to play the Rams, you got to play the Niners, one of those 2 teams, both, not teams you want to play. So that's really the scenarios, I think. I don't think we have anything else really to point out. So 3 teams fighting for the number 1 seed, but again, no Justin Herbert, so the Broncos certainly have the upper leg there. And then two teams fighting for the number 1 seed over here, win or go home. And that's going to be really fun. We have some fun games in Week 18. Listen, there's a lot of games that have draft implications as well. Giants, Raiders. Giants could have clinched the number 1 pick last week had they lost the game. They did not. So now it's up in the air. The Raiders have the upper leg. If they lose, they control their own destiny for the number 1 seed. But there's a bunch of other teams in there as well. But this really was mainly to show the playoff scenarios, not the number 1 seed scenarios, or the number 1 pick scenarios. So that's it, and we'll see what happens. Listen, I always love going through the playoff machine. They open it up with 5-6 weeks left of the season, and for me, it's so fun to see the different scenarios play out, and you could have some wild scenarios playing out. Listen, just this week, this Falcons 3-way tie is absolutely wild. And I find this crazy that the Falcons, it's like someone called it the most, what was the word they used? The most meaningful, meaningless game, right? Like neither of these teams are in play of contention, yet they could affect who makes the playoffs. It's kind of wild. So I'm kind of rooting for chaos. I want the Bucks to win just so we can see a Tyler Shuck and against Kirk Cousins with the NFC South on the line, and it not be one of those teams going in. It's kind of a wild scenario. I'm loving it. Anyway, thank you guys for listening in on this and just watching me play around with the playoff machine, and go enjoy an enjoyable last red zone week of the season, Week 18, last full slate of games as we head into the 2025 NFL postseason.